I'm sorry for the lateness of the hour. Before we do this, there are a couple people I think that would like to introduce themselves to the group. And why don't you start that?
Good morning, everyone. Tim Waldron here. I've met several of you here. I'm the community relations specialist for Eversource. Previously worked in the state senate in Hartford for a number of years. Prior to that was with Eleanor Carbone, the great city of Torrington for about 7 years. I live right here in Torrington, so I'm familiar with the area and the region. I cover about 52 towns throughout Litchfield County, Kent, Cornwall, Salisbury, across the Massachusetts border, Warren, Kent, over to Barkhamsted, Heartland, Canton, New Hartford, so a good spot for the area. So I'm glad to be here. I'd like to meet some of you in person. I've met several of you virtually so far, but certainly I'm here for the towns that I cover, and glad to be here and look forward to being a good resource for everyone.
Thank you. I think that Matt would like to make a comment before we start the meeting.
Yeah, as everybody knows, we had a pretty major incident in Norfolk on last Saturday morning. 8,200 gallons of gasoline spilled on Route 44 and managed to meander its way through town with a 3,500 foot path. The fortunate thing is, because of the how quickly everybody responded to it, we contained the material, so it did not get into any of the streams, the Blackberry River, which was a major concern. But I just want to thank all of your towns for providing your EMS people to the scene. It was a great thing to see how many people showed up. And when I say all the towns, every town there, we had within probably an hour or maybe 2 hours of the incident, we had 69 firemen there from all over, foam trucks. I mean, this was the truck rolled over and skidded on the road for 100 yards, reaching all of the compartments in the tank. All of the fuel was dumped, and it could have been a major disaster. It was in a residential area. We had foam trucks from Torrington and numerous other places on scene. But I just wanted to thank all the towns for all their support with their emergency services personnel. And I don't know if John Field is on, but I also want to thank John for everything he's been doing for us, helping to coordinate all this with our EMS people. But it was, you know, I can't say enough. So just thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, John said that he couldn't make the meeting, so
Well, we talk to him almost daily, so.
Okay, moving on. Any other public comments? No, hearing none. The report of the executive director.
all right, thank you. Thanks for everyone for coming. So we had our CCM conference last week. Emily and I attended that. We saw obviously some of you there at the conference. You know, I guess one of the biggest sessions was about the infrastructure funding. And then we also talked about the state's workforce and the situation we have here, which I'll update in a second here. But we also had another meeting on Friday, was it? I think it was, yeah. With UConn and who else was it? Co-sponsor CROG. It was public workforce development. As you all know, we're having problems filling jobs. We just had a meeting this morning with the economic or with the Chamber of Commerce. Same type of discussion. Apparently, there are a lot of jobs in the state, but there's not enough workers to fill them, and that's part of our problem. So when people look around, where are the workers? Why nobody's working? Well, because we have a lot of jobs that are needed. And there's just not enough people to fill them. So the interesting thing is it dovetails to the public workforce sector. And I think one of the graphs we saw this morning was pretty remarkable, that I think only 50-something% of the jobs pre-pandemic in the government the state, well, not state, local, I'm sure it's the entire government sector in the state. Only about 57% have been recovered or filled again since the pandemic. So that's pretty dismal. So there's a big discussion at that meeting on Friday with UConn, and it's going to continue forward. If anybody's interested, I can get you in touch with the people that are going to move forward on it. But a continuing discussion to try and see what can we do in the public sector to make jobs more attractive to folks to basically start a career there. You know, part of the problem I think we have is a little bit structural in the sense that, you know, the state right now, it continues to work one day in the office, the rest of the days remote. They're in the office on Wednesday, all hands on deck on Wednesday, they're remote the rest of the week. That's, I guess, maybe a good thing for the state, although they're still trying to fill quite a few jobs at the state level as well. But, you know, as you know, locally, the flexibility really isn't necessarily there in all cases. So it's pretty interesting discussion, and it's got some horsepower at the highest level of the state, and trying to see if there's a way to make the public sector as competitive as the private sector at this point in time. Pivoting over to our grant and discussed at the last meeting, the Foundation of Community Health Opportunity Grant, the $15,000. We did get awarded the $15,000, which we anticipated. We have since already engaged with a special grant writer for the HRSA grant, which is the $1.2 million grant over 4 years, $300,000 a year, basically to kind of carry forward and further the work that Leo's been doing in the region with mental health and health coordination within the region. So it's a very competitive grant. We really needed that special grant writer to put our best foot forward. If we do get it, it's a substantial windfall for us over the next 4 years. It would be basically 30-something% of our annual budget. And it also allows, as I understand, the ability to apportion some other hours at the COG for other activities that are associated with regional.
We've written the job description in such a way that it's all encompassing.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more of we get a little bit more bang for our buck, so to speak. It's not all encompassing on that. So it's something we're hoping that we're successful with, but I just want to report that out. And we've also had a live demonstration with the GMS, the Grants Management System software that would basically, you know, kind of automate our budgeting and our accounts payable, receivable, potentially payroll, and things of that nature. We had a live demo for that, and we're going to have a proposal from them, and some of the money from the opportunity grant has been earmarked for the initialization of that. So that's kind of exciting stuff for us over here. I mentioned the state staffing. DOT still has, I don't know if I heard the number right, 60-something positions maybe that need to be filled. And those are in the departments that we work with very closely. So that continues to be an obstacle to navigate. Demis, same thing. I think the number was 19 positions they have to fill in their grants unit and other areas over there, which is who we work with directly. So, you know, that's a bit of a hurdle to jump over, and that kind of leads into my update on the RITS program. Partially due to state staffing issues and reorganization, retasking and whatnot, the state's reimbursements to us, the COG, are behind schedule. And so what we've done, we understand that the providers have been really in dire straits as far as trying to meet payroll and their minimum requirements to run the business. So we have broken from what we normally do, as I understand, which is we gather our invoices, we submit, we wait for the reimbursement, then we pass it along to the RITS providers. We've broken from that, and we've advanced payment basically to current, I believe it is, to all the RITS providers. And we are now going to wait for, I think it's around $75,000 reimbursement from the state. So we're kind of taking one for the team, so to speak, there, and you know, assuming that the state is going to reimburse us for everything that we paid out. So I just wanted everybody to know that we're trying to do our best to try to help the RITS program stay afloat. So another news is we have Demis is going to come in for what's called a desk review. I think it's next week. And that's basically work with primarily Sarah and Casey and I to try and make sure that what they have current in their files is what we have current, coordination basically to make sure that we're on the same page. And, you know, we've been reimbursed and invoiced accordingly. So it's just basically an organizational task, which they offered and I thought was fantastic. So it'll be good to work with them closer on that. They also are getting GMS as well too. So hopefully that could be a good dovetail in that regard. Just a reminder, we have the REPT meeting on Monday at 1 o'clock. And then on Tuesday morning, just a last minute reminder, you can still register for the TEACS training, which is at Litchfield, the Litchfield Inn. And that's for all CEOs. I think it's based on a hurricane scenario of some sort, which is ironic because we've got some rain coming this weekend. So from one, but yeah, so just a reminder on those as well too. And that really concludes my report. If anybody has any questions, I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add. No. Good.
Anything new on the office?
Oh, yeah, I didn't have it on here just because I didn't really have anything new, although I'm hopeful that we're gonna get our final negotiated numbers and maybe we can call an executive committee meeting next week at some point in time. So it's gonna be kind of a, okay, let's see if we can get one in the next few days situation. So,
Okay.
but things have been progressing very well. And we're pretty confident that, you know, it's gonna be a good proposal.
Rob, I have a question about Ritz. For Ritz, what is the allocation for, like, have they given any input on, like, the vehicle allocation? Plus increased funding for increased services, because that's, you know, it's getting heavier and heavier.
Yeah,
And I know the rep AM was beating down my door last week and I kind of put them on stall them. Because they've been getting complaints from general public that they need more medical transports.
yeah, I mean, many of you know, if not all of you, that we did have 20,000 that was allocated to ED Advance and they're just not providing the service. So we basically worked out a deal with them. That 20,000 can be redistributed to the other three providers for payroll, whatever they, you know, wish to do. As far as the vehicle procurement, that's a good question. Things just don't seem to be moving very fast in that regard.
But we are, like, I know you're on the email chain,
Yeah.
but DOT did give me some dates that they're available to meet with us,
Yeah.
with their providers in December.
Yeah,
So-
I was gonna look at those,
Yeah.
to see which ones would work best for me.
Yeah, so our intent is to have a Ritz coordination meeting with our providers and invite, and hopefully, it looks like there's already to come and actually be partners at the table, all three of us, so we can try and work through those issues.
And just a quick other note, I know of another transportation service that receives funding from DOT in Milford, that they just got an increase in funding without even asking. So I don't know exactly how that
Yeah,
happened,
we'll
but
see how that works.
right, but I think definitely for 23 to 22, 25, we should be asking for more.
Yeah,
I agree.
Absolutely, yeah, appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, can we move on to the Northwest Hills housing?
Before we share it.
No,
Hidden. There we go. That's there. So I have a Zoom going chiefly because I want to record the meeting so I can put it up on the YouTube. But we also have one presenter who's going to be presenting remotely, so we can actually just present it here. There's no one else online,
Okay.
so.
And we can send the PowerPoint right after. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Bolger. I'm with Senior in Data Research and Data Analyst for the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. With me is Rob Michalik, our Director of Government Relations. And we are here today to present to you on housing market trends in the Northwest Hills and the state at large. So before we do jump into the kind of the trends piece, Rob is just going to talk briefly about who CHFA is and the programs we offer.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to actually see some friendly faces. In a previous life, I used to work for a member of Congress who represented this area for DECD. So Mike and Chris, good to see you, Gordon and others. Just some background on CHFA. We're a 53-year-old organization. We're actually a quasi-public agency, so though we are established under statute and have a public mission, we're set up to be more of a business-like organization. And actually, you won't actually find us in the state budget at all. We actually are self-sustaining. So we, in short, make our money by the fact that we can issue tax-exempt bonds, and the amount of money we have to pay to bondholders is less than what we earn in the mortgage loans and other loans that we actually hold. So just so you know, our mission is to alleviate the shortage of affordable housing here in the state. And we do that primarily in two ways. So we fund developers for the production of rental housing, and we also are involved in homeownership programs, so helping people with first-time home buyers and the like get some mortgage loans. So on the homeownership side, we provide homeownership opportunities in a number of ways. As I alluded to, we provide below market interest rate loans. So I think I last looked this morning, our interest rates are somewhere in the 6.25% range, which I think the prevailing rate is probably somewhere around 7%. We also have a down payment and program that can cover closing costs as well. And we also fund and provide home buyer education services. You should note that because we are a government entity and we have certain mission, and that mission revolves around low and moderate income individuals, that we do have some limitations on who we can help. We tend to restrict to first time and income qualified home buyers. And generally that means that we are looking at folks who have an income that is within 120% or so of area median income. And just to kind of give you some ideas of what that income limit is, you see on the bottom there for a family of four, and typically in the range of 112 to 129,000. And then also, we're not in the business of funding mortgages for mansions and the like, so there are some limitations on home prices and what we'll fund in that regard. And then on the multifamily side, we basically are in the business of creating new affordable units, helping to convert units into affordable units, and then preserving existing affordable units. And in this case, when we fund developments, we are looking for some restrictions on the ability of folks to rent to certain income folks. So again, in this case, we typically are looking at folks who are in the 50% to 80% area median income. So we typically have like a 40-year deed restriction on properties that we fund to make sure that we're preserving affordability and providing affordable rental units for folks here in the state. Sure.
No questions now or at the end?
We can take questions now.
All right, so when I look at this, I'm from Barkhamsted, we're in the process of putting in an affordable housing, that 501c3 housing trust. Is that something you would do, or do you look more for private owners, private ownership of a home?
So so I'm sorry, so you have
we have a housing trust that's along the path of putting in green housing.
gotcha. So the trust itself
What?
is the trust itself. It's well, so if they,
The trust itself, it's a private corporation.
yeah, theoretically, I mean, we typically fund the way affordable housing is funded these days for the most part is private developers, but you know, we also will work with housing authorities, and a trust like that we can work with.
Thank you.
So a housing authority can come to you, say they're gonna buy, so we have a private investor building 20, 30 units in town. Now they want to turn around and sell it to the town to meet our affordable housing requirements. And the housing authority is researching that and seeing how they do that. They would be able to come to you guys.
They could, I don't know that we would participate in the purchase in that regard, but if the housing authority itself was going to develop some property, there would be potential interface with.
Or rehab it.
Yeah, exactly. Interface with us and the Department of Housing as well. I should have said probably, we work hand in glove with the State Department of Housing on these projects. So.
Yeah, but the mortgage is not transferable
From where to,
from 501c3 if or town is gonna develop it and then sell it to a private.
yeah, well, we wouldn't get involved in that, any of that sort of transaction. That's not our business. We're funder. That's it.
Yeah, the private is looking to sell it to the town.
Yeah, so yeah, we're a funder. I mean, there are some ways we can get involved in acquisition. There are some programs, but in that case, I'm assuming probably not.
A quick question, that housing cap of 349, is that adjusted by town? Because some towns that's barely.
It varies by the geography you're looking at. So I believe it's by census tract, and like for instance, some tracts like Fairfield County,
Mhm.
those limits are probably in the 450
Okay.
or so, right?
Yeah, you can, we have an interactive map that you can just go to our website and
Mhm.
just, it's pretty defined. Where you can figure out what those limits are.
Mhm.
Any other questions before we get into the?
And just one, I will mention one other thing. So we are, and I can certainly send some information to Rob or to the rest of you. In the second week of December, we're likely to hold an event in Milford. I think they're part of WestCOG, but and we're looking at doing both a combination of our homeownership programs. If you have folks who are looking for assistance in buying a house, and also you may be aware that the state of Connecticut under ARPA received $123 million in homeowner assistance funding to help people who are struggling with mortgages or property taxes and things like that. So we'll probably discuss that program as well. So if you have constituents who are, facing foreclosure for whatever reason, it could be lack of paying their taxes, an issue with condo fees or a mortgage, we have money that potentially can help people out. The caveat on that is that, again, there are some income limitations and the hardship happened to be COVID related because it was COVID funding. So but we're looking at the second week of December in New Milford for an early evening event.
Emailed out to all.
I can send that. I think that the town of New Milford is looking to distribute some of that information as well. We haven't locked down an exact date and time, but
We
I
can
can
double
send
up
that
on
around.
that too and send that out to everybody.
Thank you. All right, so getting into kind of the nitty gritty here, so I'm gonna throw a lot of facts and figures and data at you, so please stop me if anything's confusing or if there's any question. Stop. So the primary driver in pretty much every housing market in the US is both population growth and household formation. So what you're looking at here in the green, or I'm sorry, in the blue, that is percentage change in population, green's percentage change in households. And just for reference, a household is formed anytime someone occupies a new housing unit. So a recent high school grad, college grad moves out of the parents' house into their first apartment, that's a new household that's formed. So over the last 5 years, you see, kind of the narrative Connecticut tells itself, talking about trying to fill jobs earlier, is that we're either stagnant population or losing population. And for every Connecticut county, aside from Fairfield County the last 5 years, that's held true. We've lost population. But every single county in the state has actually gained households. So that's important because it's putting pressure on the existing housing stock, especially when we're not keeping pace with new permanent units. That trend is really caused by population distribution. So what you're looking at is percent of the population by generation, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, and the silent in the US, Connecticut, and Litchfield County. You'll notice in the green, the lighter green is Connecticut, and the dark green is Litchfield County. Connecticut and Litchfield are much older than the US at large. The median age in the US is roughly 37, Connecticut's 41, and Litchfield's 48. So that's part of the reason we're seeing kind of population decline, but also, general increase in household formation.
Just so people, the dark green is Litchfield.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a little hard to.
Yeah.
Isn't that, excuse me, isn't that math kind of counterintuitive? How do you have increase in housing units when you have a loss in population?
I think there's been a trend of less, what's called cohabitation, less, a decline of people rooming up with roommates. But yeah, it does.
Families.
Yeah.
That's from a single.
So you're saying there's a decline in the average family unit size?
In like the household size, right? There's less people my age living in, rooming up with 2 and 3 other friends. They're moving with their own apartment and their own units per se. So that kind of trend by age is important when we look at when folks buy their first home. So this is the rental rate in green and the ownership rate by age in blue. So you can see kind of the lines generally crossed, i.e. There's more owner households than renter households around the age of 33. If we went back, say 10, 15 years, those lines might cross at the age of 28 or so. But, given these kinds of age trends, we've seen this kind of line move to the right. Like the average first-time home buyer is getting much, much older. And we see that in our own in CHFA's own portfolio. So this is just some metrics on CHFA's borrowers in Northwest Hills communities. See, our average age is 35. Average household size is 2.3, income 67,000, and the median sales price is about 107,000. And this is over the last 5 years. So I talked about kind of that interplay between household growth and the units. So basically, for the last, since about the 90s, we've been below average in new permitted units. So really, between 1966 and today, we've built about, on average, 12,000 units per year, or permitted 12,000 units per year, excuse me. And since about 1990, we've been below that average. I think that kind of the 80s spike and then drop off, that was really kind of the savings and loan crash. Tried to rebuild up to the Great Recession, and then there's just a dramatic drop off in permits for one unit construction. There's probably a lot of drop off in the construction industry itself, so it's much harder to build, less demand during that time period. But multifamily construction statewide has actually kept up at a pretty good pace since about 2013 or so. And as a result of that kind of lack of construction, our housing stock is much older than the US at large. So the median age for a housing unit in the US is about 1977. Connecticut, it's like 1963. And here you see there's pretty stark differences between where the housing stock age and where you're looking at in the state. So that's the redder areas are much older than the greener areas. And you can see, generally speaking, the older stock is located in your urban areas like Hartford, Waterbury, New Haven. But even in some of the Northwest Hills areas, Northwest Hills communities, you're seeing areas where the median age is pushing about 80 years old. So kind of laid the groundwork for the housing stock and kind of demographics in the state and Northwest Hills. Pivot more towards kind of the impact of COVID and inflation and the overall competitiveness in the market in the last couple of years. So this is looking at the total number of sales in the Northwest Hills communities, along with the median sales price back to 2001. So you'll notice kind of the run up to the Great Recession, the fall off, bottoming out in roughly 2011, the gradual increase, and then you look at 2020 and 2021 being significant outliers. I think you're going to notice that in the rest of the slides here. But just a dramatic increase in sales, and in 2021 for the Northwest Hills, that's actually the most sales we've had on record for the last 20 years. And correspondingly, we've seen the for sale inventory of homes kind of fall off the cliff since March of 2020. So kind of right in the middle of the graph is where March 2020 is. So you see that kind of seasonality in 2018, 2019. We just didn't see that in 2020, given increased demand. Folks are less willing to sell their home. They want to stay in place. And we just didn't see the seasonality, and it dropped off significantly. So as of October of this year, we have roughly a third of the inventory for sale statewide that we did in 2018, 2019. And as you might expect, that gives sellers a lot more power.
The seller's market.
It is, right. So this is looking at the percent of listings sold that sell above their list price. So again, it's kind of a pre and post March 2020 kind of phenomena. Pre 2020, that number is about 20% on average sell above the list price. Nowadays, depending on the month you're looking at, it's roughly 50 or 60%. And you can see on the green green line there, that's the Hartford market. It approached 80% earlier this year. And it's a little tough to see, but the Torrington market is kind of that purple right there. And as of August, it was roughly about 50% as well. So we're seeing homes sell for much more. We're also seeing them sell faster. So this is the mean number of days homes are the average number of days a home is pending, indexed to where it was in 2018, March of 2018. So you can see pretty much the downward trend, and it, as of August of this year, homes are basically selling about twice as fast as they were in 2018, 2019. You combine that with what the Fed is doing to combat inflation. It's basically a becoming an extremely unaffordable market for first-time home buyers. So the green in the back, that's the average 30-year fixed rate. The blue line, that's the year-over-year change in that rate. You can see all the way on the right side, it's pretty much the highest year-over-year change, or the fastest year-over-year change we've seen since the 1980s. I was on a webinar with some Harvard housing economists recently, and they mentioned they estimated that the pool of potential first-time home buyers over the last year has shrunk by half. So it's just buyers are getting priced out by competitiveness like 2 years ago. Nowadays, they're getting priced out by mortgage rates. So there's a lot of doom and gloom, I would say, not a very rosy picture. The one place where there is some light in the market is among existing home buyers. So, or existing homeowners, excuse me. So this is looking at in blue, the 30-year delinquency rate, or the overall delinquency rate, and in green, that's the percent in foreclosure. And you'll see kind of the run up to the Great Recession, delinquency rate spiked with the general improvement thereafter. And then again, March, April 2020, that rate spiked, and then just a dramatic increase improvement in that rate. The most recent rate we have on record is from September. It's about 2.9, which is like the lowest it's been since about mid 2007. The other part of kind of the rosy picture for existing homeowners is that 71% of them have rates under 4%. And of the originations that were made over the last 2 years, I think roughly 60% of them have credit scores above 760. So if you took advantage of the market in the last 2 years, you're doing fine. You have an affordable monthly payment, your credit score is fairly high, and you're not subject to the 7% rates we're seeing now. So because you can't talk about the ownership market without talking about the rental market, we also want to comment on that as well. So again, this is kind of a pre and post March 2020 story. Starting in March of that year, we saw vacancy rates across all of Connecticut's markets drop dramatically. So they used to hover around 5% or so. Now they're closer to 2%. The theory there being that as the single family ownership market gets much more competitive, you have renters that would otherwise be homeowners that are stuck, for a lack of a better word, in their rental unit, thereby driving down vacancy rates pretty significantly. Unfortunately, the vendor we use for this data doesn't have information on the Torrington market. That said, I did spot check some properties through this platform pretty recently, and I was seeing vacancy rates right around where Norwich is, about 1.5 or so, 2 points or 2 percentage points. So low vacancy rates gives landlords pretty significant market power, as you might expect. And you can see here that results in pretty significant year-over-year rent growth across those markets. And you see kind of the outlier here is the Norwich market. They had earlier this year rent growth approaching 12% in the second quarter. But I think the silver lining here is that you see the forecast and things are slated to kind of come back down and come back to normal, have some more historically normal rent growth over the next couple of years. And given how much of the CPI is made up of shelter costs, you might see, as this comes back down, the Fed see this and say, okay, we're going to take the break off the interest rate increases. So that the average 30-year fix might come down, and we may possibly this spring see that spring inventory push, which may put us in a more historically normal place in the single family market.
I would just like to say that your trending for your vacancy rate might be off, quite a few percentages, because the eviction rate for landlords to get non-paying rents out has been slowed dramatically.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it takes a year to get a tenant out. So those vacancy rates, you may see them right now where they're not horrible. But come next year, this time, when we're able to actually evict and get people out that are not paying their rents, you're gonna see either foreclosures go up, or you're gonna see vacancy rate almost double when they finally catch up to getting these individuals out of the rents.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the eviction moratorium is obviously a story here, combined with just how competitive the market is for sure. So, and if you look at the vacancy forecast, it does actually kind of predicts below normal vacancy rates for the foreseeable future. So it's still gonna be a very hot market. It's just gonna be cooling slightly.
Isn't that combined with the fact that since the Great Recession, rates have been artificially low by
Oh,
the
yeah,
Fed?
yeah.
Because this whole idea that you could have 3% mortgages is not historically.
I mean, a 7% mortgage, historically speaking,
Used to be.
is normal,
average.
right? But it was not combined with extremely high prices. There used to be kind of an inverse relationship between the two. What is abnormal is the rate at which this has changed over the last 6-9 months, whatever it's been. And it hasn't let inventory, for sale inventory, creep back up and bring prices back down. Before I talk about ways to kind of keep in touch, any other questions? There's a lot of information through it pretty quickly.
It is.
Hopefully we can get your slide.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that people can look it up closely.
So yeah, just ways to keep in touch. We had recently launched a blog through CHFA called The Intersect. It runs through this and a whole host of other market trends that we're seeing. We have a data research and reports page that I pulled a lot of this information from. In terms of just keeping up with CHFA generally, we have a bulletin that you can sign up to receive updates on our programs, news, events that are happening, and the links right there. If you have research questions, I know a lot of folks are working on their affordable housing plans. You can reach out to us at research@chfa.org. We're more than happy to provide assistance, data, whatever you need. And then if you need marketing materials, I'm going to leave some brochures about our single family program on the way out, but you can reach out to us on marketing@chfa.org. And then obviously the universal ask, just follow us on social media for updates.
Have you done any research or thought process about the impact of construction materials here? Because we are all doing those affordable housing plans, and a lot of us scratch our heads going, there's no answer to it.
Yeah.
There's nothing left in the market. Rental rates, sale prices are going through the roof. Construction to bring new units in, you can't afford to put stuff up that's gonna be anywhere near affordable.
Yeah.
And everything's sold out. There's nothing left to sell. So there's gonna be a longer duration of people that are in these, because they just moved. There's nobody who's gonna want to flip. That's a very limited market for people to flip.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we're all sitting here scratching our head going, how do you get to 10% affordable housing without getting you guys doing mortgages in your town? And it's pretty tight to get something under 350 in all of these towns. You know, absent the city centers where you might be able to get some affordability on something that's in a really dense environment. But Litchfield County, we're stuck with a 10% ratio here that doesn't really, that one size fits all number doesn't seem to fit. Yeah, statutorily for us. And wondering how we're gonna get into compliance unless we could get more people like you doing those mortgages. Right.
Yeah, I don't know what we've done from a study standpoint of the impact, but we're dealing with the same thing, right? We're funder, right? Of multi-family affordable housing. Construction costs are a huge concern of ours as well, because, you know, we, over the course of this, we enter conversations with developers, and the price of development is X one day, and then, a year later, it's now, because of inflation and construction costs, it's significantly higher, and we have to work with them to fill gaps and all of that. So it's certainly challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally tracking, this is getting kind of wonky, but the producer price index for construction materials is the inverse of the CPI, and you're seeing it kind of sort of roll over at the moment. So there's some hope that things will again return to not completely normal, but some sense of predictability.
No, and as you alluded to, I mean, one pitch for us too is that our mortgages do count as a unit of affordable housing towards your plan. So plug for us to, get people who are, you get some low moderate income folks that you hear as constituents who are looking for home mortgages, they can, come to us.
Absolutely.
Some info on that here.
Thank you.
I mean, we work with lenders, so go to their lender, but they can always call us for information or whatever.
Just as a note of interest, our town just finished its 5-year reassessment of property. And the values in our town in the last 5 years have increased by 30%. And that just makes us more unaffordable for for young families and everything else. I think Connecticut is having a real housing crisis. And it's really at the lower end, the least likely to attract a developer. And that's a real issue for all of us in this corner of the state.
Cost of living too.
I would say it's not just Connecticut, it's nationwide, you know, it might be a little exaggerated in Connecticut because we haven't built to historic averages in the last 10 or so years, but you know, it's nationwide.
Yeah, well. Okay.
Just one real quick comment to what Mike's point said, some of you may have heard this morning if you're at the chamber, but the CBIA president. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was discussing this and it turns out that apparently companies right now used to traditionally always been, you know, lower taxes. That's the big issue. But now apparently it's cost of living because their workers can't live here. Or they can't find people who are willing to pay or able to pay to live here. So it's the cost of living that's the big driver right now of concerns for the businesses.
I always said you can't have affordable housing until you make the state affordable to live in.
They
The
go
state
hand in hand.
itself is a holistic nightmare. You know, you've got to approach it from all angles. You can't create jobs, you can't have young families live here, the cost of living is expensive. And when you're charging, when homeowners and landlords are charging rents that what you would pay if you owned your own home, it makes it impossible. You got renters paying, you know, $1,800, $1,900, $2,100 to live in a single family home. They don't have the extra money to put down on to go buy their own home to only pay the same thing to own it. And then have all the problems. They think to themselves, you know, young people today don't want the responsibility of having to fix the roof, the siding, the windows, fill up the oil tank, mow the lawn, move the snow, all that stuff. They want the landlords to do it. But they're also complaining because the rent's gotta be so high because the taxes are so high. You know, so it's a real problem. It's a nightmare coming, you know. So.
I think to build on that, so the question is, you showed a trend that the average home ownership didn't start until age 33 now. Is that preference, exactly what Mike said, people don't want the responsibility of a home? Or is it affordability, or is it the demographics? And what do you think is causing that trend to go up, you know, 5 years in the last 5 years or 10 years?
I think there's a lot of factors. You know, I think you think about when the last generation kind of graduated into the job market, it was during the recession. So a lot of the job recovery happened in like major cities, be it New York, Boston, whatever. I know a lot of my friends moved from, I'm from Manchester. So a lot of my friends moved from central Connecticut to those major areas. And obviously there's not an affordable ownership stock in those areas. So, you know, as they move back in their kind of early 30s, that's when they start kind of looking. Also maybe student debt's a factor. I think just, you know, the way prices have been going, it takes a lot longer for folks to save up for down payment. And that's actually where our product comes in handy, given the down payment assistance program too. It's a useful resource.
Yeah, I think it is a number of things. I think, you know, as Andrew alluded to, it's probably a combination of how much it costs to buy a home now. So you have to save that up, and down payment is typically one of the biggest barriers. And then to the lack of affordable housing, starter home, you know,
Yes.
starter homes out there. So if you can't find starter homes, developers aren't building them like they used to, that it's hard for a young person to get into a home that's $400,000 or something.
It's a complex problem, to say the least.
So let's move on to the CT. Bailey, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming out.
Emily, I'll send you those slides.
Yeah. thank
Yeah,
you.
no, once we finalize the date, which should be this week, we'll send information.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Jacqueline and Jessica, can you hear us?
Yes, hello.
Oh, we can't hear you though.
What is going on with the volume?
Thank you.
Your volume is crossed off there, I think.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be coming through here.
Um,
Unless this one's picking up as a co-host.
unmute. Yeah.
It's funny, ever since I started switching back and forth to Teams and Zoom, this owl's been
If
confused.
you hit that all the way to the bottom where it's an X next to the microphone.
Where?
All the way down, farther down,
Right.
Yeah.
right there,
Well, I mean, I'm
and
just
turn
worried
it
about
up,
an echo.
yeah.
Can you hear us now?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Oh,
It's-
I
it's
can,
only
we
coming
can
through
hear it a
here.
little bit. Do you want me to
Unfortunately,
put the speaker?
Select your.
It shouldn't matter. What now? Can you try it again?
Oh, I hear an echo. You may hear us.
Yeah, see, I can't turn that on.
Rob, I'll get the speaker.
All right, we'll try that. But
I think we're jinxed.
Yeah,
We're
she
never
can listen to
expected to
co-host.
present.
Can you make her the host?
This is pretty cool
Maybe I
though.
can over here, I can make them. Okay, try it again.
All right, can you hear us? Me?
Why is it coming through
No.
there?
No.
There. You know what? If I leave this computer audio. Okay, try it again.
Hi, can you hear us? I don't think they can hear us.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I can see you on their screen now.
Oh, man.
Joyce.
With the, and the projector too. I wonder if it's something with the projector. Sometimes that happens,
Maybe.
the projector sound.
All right, one more test.
All right, can you hear us?
So you can hear us
Test.
loud and clear, right? Thumbs up?
We can hear you, yeah.
Hear you.
Well,
This makes no sense. You there?
yeah, we're here. Can you hear us?
I don't know what I did, but it worked.
Oh,
Oh,
yay. Are we,
Delay.
oh, I see, we're on a screen, so you can, we're on a larger screen.
Yeah, we can see you, yeah. we can
Okay.
see you. All you would need to do is, share your screen and then we can. see
Okay,
your-
perfect. Yeah,
Perfect.
Jessica will be sharing screen. So that's great, but thank you so much, Rob. I don't know if people are ready to start or.
Yes.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, great. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for letting us be on the agenda to Rob. We showed up at the last meeting. Both of us live a distance away and found out the meeting was canceled when we arrived. So, but we were able to go to Thorncrest Farm and get some really awesome chocolates. That is like my favorite place. I send those chocolates all around the country to people as gifts. So I'm happy to be investing in your community. But my name's Jacqueline Cozen. I'm the Senior Advisor and Chief of Government Affairs for Connecticut Paid Leave. I always enjoy actually these meetings. I worked for the state comptroller and we would go to the COGs because this is where the day-to-day happens and has the greatest impact on a lot of people's lives in the community. So we thought it would be good if we could share some information about paid leave with all of you, just because you may have constituents or neighbors who could benefit from the program. The northwest corner is our lowest utilization area outside of Canaan, which is literally the #1 town that has the highest utilization rate in terms of applying for paid leave in the state, but significantly. So we thought it would be helpful to just present to you today some information about the program that you can pass on. We understand that municipal employees and boards of education are not able to participate unless they collectively bargain in, but it is a program that really does help people when they have a significant health event in their lives or that of a family member. And especially in these times, I hear you talking about the housing situation, which with the gas prices, grocery bills, now more than ever, paid leave will really come in handy. So I'm going to hand it over to Jessica, who will present a PowerPoint, and we're here for questions. And we'll also email the PowerPoint onto you as well so that you have it to look at afterwards. So, and thank you again for letting us be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. As Jacqueline mentioned, my name is Jessica Vargas. I'm the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. And I am also, while I live far from the Northwest corner now, I am a Litchfield County native. I grew up in Watertown. So even though we weren't able to attend your meeting, it was nice to be back in that area of the state, and I got to go and see some family while I was there. So I will go ahead and share my screen and get started with this presentation. It's a short presentation, so at the end, we definitely will have time to answer any questions anyone may have. Can I just get confirmation that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, so just a quick overview. I'm going to talk about the difference between paid leave and FMLA, which is the #1 area of confusion for folks who are looking into our program. Go through the qualifying reasons for leave, and then some high-level overview information about what you need to know about the paid leave program, how to apply, and what to know about FMLA, and we'll leave you with some additional resources. So the #1, as I mentioned, area of confusion is the difference between FMLA and Connecticut paid leave. So FMLA is something that's been a law both federally and in the state of Connecticut since the 1990s. And what that law does, or that set of laws, is provide job protection for folks when they're out of work for a qualifying health or family reason. However, it does not and has never provided income replacement. So that's where the Connecticut paid leave law comes in. While the Connecticut paid leave program in and of itself does not provide job protection, it works hand in hand with FMLA so that a person who is out on FMLA leave can apply directly to us for income while they're out on leave if they're not being paid through their employer. One important thing that we're still trying to get out to all businesses in Connecticut is that not only does Connecticut paid leave apply to businesses with 1 or more employees in Connecticut, the Connecticut FMLA law also changed at the beginning of this year to apply to businesses with 1 or more employees in Connecticut. Before 2022, a business had to have 75 or more employees in order to be subject to Connecticut FMLA. So we are really trying to make sure that businesses understand that this is something that they're now subject to and have to consider if an employee tells them that they're going out for one of these qualifying reasons. What are those qualifying reasons? There are 6 reasons. These are the reasons both for job protection under FMLA and for paid leave income replacement benefits. The first, and by far the majority of applications that we receive for our program, is for medical leave. So that's leave that a person would take for their own serious health condition. That does include serving as an organ or a bone marrow donor and pregnancy. And so a serious health condition is not, a cold, the flu, even COVID, unless it sort of rises to this statutory definition of a serious health condition, which essentially means the person is incapacitated for 3 or more days and that they're under the care of a healthcare professional. The second type of leave, and our second most common application reason, is bonding leave. That's leave that parents can take to bond with a new child that's entered their home through birth, adoption, or foster care. It can be taken by both of the parents, and it can be taken at any time during the 12 months after the child's birth or placement in the home. The third type of leave is caregiver leave. This is leave that a worker would take to provide care for a family member who's experiencing a serious health condition. Connecticut has a more expansive definition of family member, which I'll review in just a moment. We have 2 types of leave for the military. One is military caregiver leave, which is leave the worker would take to care for a family member who is injured during active duty. And then there's something called qualifying exigency leave. This is leave that a worker can take if they're notified that their spouse, parent, or child is going to be deployed or is on federal active duty. And so that could be things like seeing the family attorney to revise the will before the military member is deployed, arranging for alternative childcare once the deployment happens, or things of that nature. Connecticut also has a provision for family violence leave. It's a separate law called the Family Violence Leave Act. that provides up to 12 days in a calendar year of job protection for a victim of family violence for the reasons you see listed on the screen. So relocating, participating in court proceedings, seeking counseling or medical care, obtaining services from a victim services organization. And a person who's experiencing family violence can also apply to Connecticut paid leave for up to 12 days of income replacement. As I mentioned, serious health condition does involve incapacity and treatment by a healthcare provider. When we first launched our program benefits in January, we had an influx of COVID claims coming in. And so that's why we're really striving to make sure that folks understand what constitutes a serious health condition. So things like an overnight stay in a hospital, or if someone has a chronic conditions and they see their healthcare provider continuously for treatment and management of that condition. A long-term condition for which treatment is no longer effective, like the terminal stages of cancer. Those are all things that qualify as serious health conditions. It's not an exhaustive list, of course, but just to give some context to what sort of things people would be applying to us for. And incapacitation during pregnancy is also a serious health condition. Now, I mentioned in terms of caregiver leave that Connecticut has an expansive definition of family. And so what I mean by that is under federal laws, so federal FMLA, the only family relationships that are recognized are a parent, a spouse, or a child under 18 or over 18 with a disability. But in the state of Connecticut, our Connecticut FMLA law and Connecticut paid leave apply to any of the family relationships that you see listed, as well as any individual related to the employee by blood or affinity. That essentially means that if the employee has a close personal relationship with someone that is like one of those family relationships, even if they are not legally related, they can still take caregiver leave. And the most common example of this would be an unmarried couple who lives together, shares a home, maybe they have children together, but they're not married. And because Connecticut does not recognize common law marriage, they would not, under federal FMLA, be able to take caregiver leave to care for each other. But under the Connecticut laws, they would be able to do so. What else do you need to know about Connecticut paid leave? Well, first, you need to know who's a covered employer. And as I mentioned, almost all employers with one or more people working in the state are covered, meaning that their employees are potentially eligible for this benefit. Non-unionized state of Connecticut employees are also covered. You heard Jacqueline mention that municipalities and local or regional boards of ed are excluded from this program unless their unionized members collectively bargain for participation. There are a couple of other exclusions as to non-covered employers, and that includes the federal government, sovereign nations, governments of other states, non-public elementary or secondary schools, and railroads. We also do have a provision for sole proprietors and self-employed individuals. They are not required to participate in the paid leave program, but they may opt in if they would like to do so. And if they do opt in, they contribute at the same rate as all other employees, which is 1/2 of 1%. For sole proprietors, they do have to be a resident of the state of Connecticut in order to participate. For other employees, they do not need to be a resident. They just need to be working for a covered business in Connecticut, but sole proprietors do need to be a resident. And they would become eligible for benefits after 3 full months of contributions. Now, in terms of the eligibility, if a person works for a covered employer, then they have to meet these eligibility requirements. And those are that they earned at least $2,325 and the highest earning quarter of the first 4 of the 5 most recently completed quarters. That's a mouthful. We've tried so many times to find an easier way to say it, and there just really is no easier way to say it. But basically what it means is if, for example, someone was applying for benefits right now in this 4th quarter of 2022, we would be looking back essentially a year ago. So we'd be looking at the last 2 quarters of last year and the first 2 quarters of this year to make sure that the person earned at least that minimum in one of those quarters. Then they have to be currently employed in Connecticut by a covered employer, or if they're not, they were employed by a covered employer within the 12 weeks before their leave began. We at the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority make these determinations. In terms of the benefits, there are up to 12 weeks of income replacement benefits available for most reasons. There are an additional 2 weeks for incapacitation during pregnancy. So that could be anything from routine prenatal appointments to a person being put on bed rest to a pregnant person breaking their leg while they're pregnant. That would cause incapacitation, that would enable them to have those additional 2 weeks. And then, as I mentioned, the family violence leave law provides for up to 12 days of the 12 weeks to be used in connection with family violence. In terms of the amount of money that the benefit would provide, workers who earn minimum wage receive 95% of their wages. Workers who earn above minimum wage, there's a very complicated formula that's used to figure out what their benefit number is. But the sort of important points for folks to know is that in all cases, the benefits are capped at 60 times the state minimum wage, and that currently works out to $840 per week. And the amount of money a person would receive can be offset by any income they're receiving from their employer. So that could be PTO time, that could be a short-term disability policy. So those are all things that people need to keep in mind if they're trying to sort of figure out how much they would be eligible for. And then lastly, the wages are not based on, the wages we use to determine the benefit are not based on the current earnings. They're based on those 4 of the 5 most recently completed quarters that we look at for eligibility. So that's also important because we want to make sure folks know that maybe they're in a new job now where they're making more than they were a year ago. But if they apply for this program, we're not looking at what they're making right now. We're looking at what they were making previously during that base period. To apply for paid leave benefits, we have 2 methods of application. We advise people to apply through our online portal if they're able and feel comfortable with the technology to do so. But we also can accept applications via phone at that 877 number that you see listed. We work with AFLAC as our third-party claims administrator. So if they call the 877 number, they're speaking to an AFLAC representative who specifically works on the Connecticut Paid Leave Program. Employees do have to tell their employer if they are applying for Connecticut paid leave benefits. And again, we do try to really drive home the point that they will need to apply directly to their employer for job protection under FMLA because our law, the paid leave law, does not provide job protection. The claims process, when the employee starts their application, we provide them with a letter that outlines all the documents they need to return to us. Once they submit all those documents, which includes identity verification, employment verification, and then specific forms related to whatever type of leave they're applying for, we have about 10 to 15 days to review all of those documents and make a decision. And right now, our decision time is actually running about 7 days. This is just an example of the kind of form that the person would receive. So I've highlighted just some important information, the type of leave they're applying for, the dates they're applying for, and then we provide a due date by which we need them to return the documents we're asking for and a list of the different documents that we need. As I mentioned, we have some resources that I want to leave you with before we take any questions. So our website is a wealth of information. We have several hundred frequently asked questions there. For questions that can't be answered through the website, we do have a contact us portal where a constituent could submit their question and they can request that one of our contact specialists calls them back instead of emailing if they would prefer to do that. If anyone has an already filed claim that they're having questions about, we would advise that they contact AFLAC directly. And then FMLA is actually something that is overseen by the Department of Labor. So any questions about FMLA from businesses or individuals, we would advise you to direct folks to the Connecticut or Federal Department of Labor as it is appropriate. This is an example of some of the different information on our website that can be downloaded for businesses or employees. We have several video tutorials on our YouTube page. We have employee fact sheets, toolkits, paycheck mailers, all kinds of things for businesses that may not have done a lot of communication with employees and really aren't sure what to tell them, or for employees who are just seeking more information. And with that, I will stop sharing and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about the program.
Are there any questions?
I have a question just as an employer. Is there any help for an employer who only has, let's say, 10 employees that maybe has 3 people out? And how do we, if we have to fill somebody in to fill that spot, does that person then, when the original employee comes back, do they get to collect unemployment, and does that go against my unemployment rates?
That's a great question, and it has been asked before. I want to double check with our general counsel, and then Jacqueline and I can send the answer over. I believe the answer is that no, it does not go against your unemployment. But I want to just confirm that, because it's been quite a while since someone asked me that question, and I want to make sure I provide the right answer.
The turnaround time on making a decision whether someone's eligible or not, is that the number you gave? Is that a recent number? The 8
Yes,
days?
it is. So that was reported within the past, I would say, 2 weeks. What I will say is that the number one reason for delays is incomplete paperwork or missing documents. So oftentimes people will contact us and say, man, I applied a month ago and I haven't gotten a decision yet. It's almost always because there's a piece of documentation missing, or because there were inconsistencies. So sometimes a doctor will put certain dates for leave and an employer will put other dates. Or a doctor will put a return date as to be determined, which we can't use. It has to be a finite date. But once all the documents are received, it's running about 7 business days right now.
Yeah, the reason I ask is, I know at least 2 people that didn't have any inconsistencies in their application like that, and they were 8 to 12 weeks out on a decision. And they pretty much were out of time by the time they were approved.
We definitely did have delays, especially towards the beginning of the program and into the springtime. Certainly something that, we recognized and we have been working on. But there really shouldn't be such a long delay right now. We would definitely advise anyone who's having an issue like that, if they're not getting somewhere with Aflac, to reach out to us through our website, because we also have an internal team that we can escalate things to. For example, I oversee our social media. So I have people who reach out to us through social media, and we can just collect a bit of their information and get it to our internal team, and they can look into their case right away. So if you do encounter folks who are having that problem, please just ask them to contact us directly through our website so that we can escalate that.
And the other thing too is that it is like, if they, went out and, it took a while to process, they will still be paid. If they're approved, they will still get payment for that time period. They just will get it after they're out. But we ask people to, if they can, it's hard because you get in a car accident and you have surgeries and you have all this other stuff. It's hard to know when you're going to be out. But if you have surgery planned, we ask people that, maybe 30 days out, if they could start the application process so that there aren't those delays and we can get things moving and approved for them so that they don't have any issues. But like Jessica said, the contact center on our website is very responsive. I work directly with legislators and elected officials that get constituent issues, and I then go and chase it down and we get things moving. So we are happy to be, responsive on any of that. And, things have been a little bit more smooth since the beginning of the year with the COVID surge. So, yeah.
I have a question. Is Gordon getting up?
Oh, I just had a quick question. Did I read your slide correctly? This does not apply to municipalities unless it's in a union negotiation?
Yes, that is correct. The law is written such that municipalities and boards of education are excluded unless the unionized members collectively bargain to be included.
Thank you.
Good question. Just our town and our school boards have not bargained in, but just globally, because a lot of the people disabled aren't in the position to deal with this unless it's a specific constituent request. But can you speak to, in terms of the state workforce, how many people are eligible for this? Your agency, how many people are out on paid leave at any one time? Just so we have a feel for the success of the program and what's actually happening in real time. If I were to ask you right now, how many of the state's employees are eligible for this program and how many are taking advantage of this program? So if anyone were to query me about what's going on with CT paid leave, I could speak intelligently to it.
Sure. So I just want to make sure I understand. You're talking about the population of eligible employees in the state, correct?
And then out of those, how many might actually be out on paid leave right now? How many applications are you dealing with on a daily basis?
Sure.
What's going on?
Yeah, so so to date, I'll give you sort of the to date snapshot and then kind of the monthly snapshot. To date, we have paid out $207 million to just under 40,000 individuals. So that's from January 1st through October 31st. We are receiving anywhere from, on the low end, 6,000 to on the high end, about 8,000 applications per month. And our approval rate is, I want to say, we just went over this morning. What was it, Jacqueline? I think it was roughly about 55%.
It was 57%.
57%.
So did you say 207 million to how many?
It's
40,000?
just under 40,000 employees, yes. There are more claims than that. The reason being, we track pregnancy and childbirth claims separately than bonding claims, just for our own edification of what people are applying for. So the number of applications or the number of claims is higher, but the number of individuals is about 40,000.
And we could send, if it's helpful, along with the slideshow, at our board meetings, we give statistics every single month about what we're paying out, how, the application status and all of that. So we're happy to send that along with the slides if people would be interested in that as well.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And I just wanted to circle back to the question about unemployment insurance, because I was messaging with our general counsel. And so she did confirm that in the situation you described, it would not be charged against the employer when that temporary employee filed for unemployment insurance.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate your
Thank you
time.
again. Thanks for setting this up, Rob. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Dr. Kitching?
Excellent. Matter of fact,
Help yourself. Where we want to go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Kitching. I'm the Executive Director at Advance. There's some familiar faces around the table. Pre-pandemic, I had made a couple of visits to the COG. We'd actually done some work together too. So I was happy to have Rob reach out again and give me this opportunity to reconnect and see what we can do in collaboration between the rests and the COG. So three things I have for you. One is a copy of our most recent annual report, which statutorily we have to present to the State Department of Education and the State Board of Ed each year as one of Connecticut's RESCs. I have my business card stapled to that for contact information. And what I'm going to just hopefully briefly go over today and be happy to answer any questions is just this one pager that we produce each year to update people on what we do and how we do it and where we do it. So we have a history as the Regional Education Service Center. We are statutorily required to exist in Connecticut under statute 10-66A. We as an agency have been around since 1966. Had a few different names. 4 or 5 years ago, we had to change our name from Education Connection, which had been the organization's name for a long time. It's a long story. It has to do with the people that used to be on ESPN to get your degree in your pajamas, which was educationconnection.com. It's an unfortunate association, and they had it trademarked and we didn't. So we're at Advance now and happy for it. We, have over the last 5 years as well, restructured our organization significantly around this idea that if we stay connected to the stakeholders in our region, that we continuously work on a positive culture within our agency and that we customize the service and supports we do, we'll be a better agency and better able to meet our mission, which quite simply is to serve the school districts and communities within risks region. We are different, significantly different from the other 5 reps in Connecticut in that we are not in the magnet school business. So we are not technically an LEA or school district under the eyes of the state. It was a little dicey during the pandemic. We didn't get any relief money as school districts did. We didn't get state money like the other RESCs did because we don't run magnet schools. But quite honestly, it's the reason we're at Advance. Have no interest in being in the magnet school business. I think it changes the nature of what a RESC should be and could be. We don't serve in competition or don't compete with school districts for students, for teachers, for administrators, for talent, really. We can be exactly what the Connecticut state statute says we should be, a support and a service to communities and boards of education and school districts within our region. We serve the 32 communities in the Northeast, including Western Connecticut, so everything from the I-84 corridor, Danbury, Bethel, Brookfield, Newtown, Southbury, Middlebury, all the way up into our own northwest corner here. We do basically, if school districts need it, we can do it. From food service to professional learning, special ed programs. We transport students. You see our vans right now. We have 150 vans. Unfortunately, we only have about 110 drivers. So we have about 110 vans that circulate throughout the region every day. Provide before and after school programs for families, birth to 3 services, early childhood, Head Start in Torrington, Winchester, Plymouth, and Watertown. We have a number of different specialized services, human resources, IT, marketing, which we do not only for school districts, but for some municipalities as well. And then we are the adult learning and adult education provider for the Northwest corner. That includes Foothills Trader, Foothills Trader. So that's a whole nother thing. Foothills Adult Education. I grew up in Canton, so I'm familiar with the Foothills Trader. Foothills Adult Education, which does not only the required, the state and federally required GED and diploma courses, but also enrichment courses for the region. The backside of this one pager just gives you a little more information about EdAdvance. We have over 640 regular, consistent employees. Seasonally, with part-timers, that number goes up to over 800. Our budget in the last fiscal year was just over $38 million. In the current fiscal year, we anticipate will be closer to $41 million. We're proud of the fact that the majority of our funding comes from local fee-for-service programs. It means that we're not dependent on state funding because quite honestly, it's not there for us because we don't run magnet schools. So there's not that opportunity in a lot of areas. We do have some state and federal contracts and a few grants, but for the most part, we get our money from local school districts and municipalities. And our budget wouldn't have grown by close to 40% over the last 5 years if we weren't doing it well and doing it more cost effectively. Because all of you as municipal leaders and certainly superintendents as school district leaders have taxpayers to answer to. So if we weren't a good option, our budget wouldn't be going in the direction it is. And we wouldn't have this 57 to 27% really flip-flop from what it was 6 or 7 years ago, where in the past it's been 60% of our money was coming from grants and things we had to go out and provide and closer to 30. And as a large nonprofit, as we are, having 90% of all of our revenue go back to the communities and the school districts we serve is a pretty impressive number. And not many large nonprofits have that kind of turnaround. We have 7 different facilities. We serve 7 school districts and 32 communities. As I've said, we serve over 46,000 students in the region. Our adult education served over 1,300 adults in the region. We have over 400 students in the region that are in before and after school programs that we operate, and over 2,000 students served by our early childhood programs. Over 100 special education students served in our programs that are focused in and housed in Torrington, Plymouth, Waterbury, and the Danbury Bethel area. The Waterbury program is at post-university. It's a transition program for 18 to 21-year-old students who are still, the school districts are still responsible for providing services for them. These are students who have already graduated, but need more specialized support as they transition to career in college. Over 161 professional learning trainings we did last year, served over 8,000 meals and lunches and breakfasts daily throughout the region to about seven different school districts where we are the food service provider. And as I said, 130 vehicles that clocked over 2 million miles, driving 171 students. So that's who we are. I'm here. I meet regularly, obviously, twice a month with all the superintendents in the region and make personal visits to central offices throughout the region. But part of our mission and part of what we've tried to promote is to be a service and support to communities as well. So for the leaders across the municipalities in the community, I would say, if there's anything that I mentioned or anything, actually what superintendents love to share with their boards is really the inside cover of our annual report, where there's really a long list down the left side of all the different things we do, all the communities we serve across the top, and which of those services we provide. So there's a matrix for each of your communities and what we do for them. There are a few, I know, towns in the COG that are part of PrEP and not part of that advance, so you may not be listed. But if there's ever anything we can do to help in any way, either through the COG regionally or individually, how to get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to send the right people out to talk or come talk to myself.
I have a
That's
quick
my
question for
story
you.
in 5 minutes or less.
So I've met with Betsy Terrell, right, who's in
Yep,
charge of
Becky,
food
yes.
service. Oh, Becky, yes. And we did do a food waste audit at one of our schools in Litchfield. I know in advance, provides our, and we have a lot of work to do with food waste because there's a lot of food waste. And once it comes out of the cafeteria, it goes from the kitchen into the cafeteria, even if it's never opened, it gets dumped into the garbage. And as we're going to be passing, hopefully, an ordinance that schools and nonprofits and people who not pay taxes in our town, they're going to start paying their own tipping fee. That's going to be a number that's going to be astonishing that they're going to have to pay for the tipping fee. So I'd like to work more closely to figure out a way that instead of that food going into the garbage, it can be diverted to food rescue or to social service pantries.
So hopefully, I'm sure Becky might have shared some of this because I know she's aware of it. And as a superintendent in 2 different communities, I dealt with that issue too. There are 2 problems. Anything that's already been cooked and prepared, you have local health district rules that we really can't do a lot with it afterwards. You can't wrap it back up and send it to the food pantry like you like to in a lot of places.
That probably should be changed.
It should be. Yeah, I'm not,
Yeah,
trust me.
you're not making.
And then you have, if you're in a district that you get any federal money also, then there's a whole nother. Anything.
Right, you can't donate it,
You
even
can't
though.
donate it, you can't do anything with it, really. You're really limited. As a superintendent, I used to put a blind eye as principals would put food out on a table and kids would just walk by and grab what they could. And if I wasn't asking, I didn't have to answer anything. So,
Which I think
really, I
that's
had no
really-
idea that was going on.
Yeah, right, that really is, I know.
So now I'm not a superintendent, I can admit.
Things like the milks that every
Right.
kid has to get
Right,
that
which the
have
feds
to drink.
provide and.
Right, or the apples that are wrapped in plastic that are never eaten, right, and sandwiches.
Right.
Wrapped in plastic, never touched, get all thrown into the garbage, so.
I would love to see changes and as much flexibility as possible, so none of that happens, and certainly happy to have Becky and her staff have that conversation.
Yeah,
in any
she's
community
been
about
helpful.
how we can help. But again, with school lunches, this has been on the news a lot. Communities have gotten used to free school lunches, and now, that has dried up in most communities, and it's going to become a big issue. There's a lot of things you can do without that state or federal funding, but the cost of doing business just goes through the roof if you're not subsidizing, and then you get kickback from parents too. So we're always happy to talk, and I agree, it's a big
Yeah,
problem. that
and
needs
just
to
a
be addressed.
suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah.
the one day I went, they literally gave kids K-3 cookies the size of their heads. And of course, that's all they ate, right? And everything else was thrown into the garbage. I mean, that's all the kids would eat. So just as a, I mean, I don't know who's in charge of that. but that's
Every
all.
square inch, trust me, every square inch of that cookie has been nutritionally factored in. That goes back to the feds to say exactly how much sugar,
Yeah.
salt, every
Well,
other
they didn't-
nutritional aspect. There's a reason it was this big and not that big, probably, so.
Kind of tying in with the food waste, is there any, thought of improving the quality of food that is being served at the school? We've had a ton of complaints about what's being served in our school lunches, and there's actually a comparison between what's being served in a correctional institution and what's being served as school lunch, and the correctional institution looks much better. So that's what I'm hearing a lot of.
Yeah, and I'm used to
Is
that
there,
conversation. The answer is always yes. But there has to be an appetite, pardon the pun, on the part of the parents to pay for that difference.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you can
instead of-
only use the food that's on the state and federal list and the government subsidized avenues to get that. And you have to have every single meal meet that nutritional equation.
instead of meeting it, how about exceeding?
You can exceed it.
Yeah,
And the districts just need to
That's
be
what we
ready
need
to
to-
pay for it and pass the.
because I see a lot of that food, just
Right.
like
Get thrown in the
Denise is
garbage.
saying, it's
Right.
getting thrown out, because
Right.
it's.
Like I said, it's, but, I've
Is there any thought or?
been involved in
plans?
this for a long time. School food service is a deficit proposition in most Board of Ed budgets. I have one school where, one school district where I was a superintendent where it operated in the black. But that was because we got a lot of free and reduced lunch money and that helped it operate in the black. But we also, to do that, had to put up with constant complaints about the quality of the food and everything else.
So is there
At
anything?
another district where it always operated a deficit, but we had great lunches. And, anybody would go and eat there.
Are there plans to like improve the food quality?
I know that specifically in Region 6, we've set up a parent group. They have conversations about it all the time. But I know there still remains a handful of students and parents who are unhappy. We meet with Chris Leone, or Becky does regularly to go over those complaints. And we've laid it out to Chris and his administration that, here's what we could do, but here's the price tag for that. So again, that's a local decision that would need to be made. There are lots of solutions, but typically they come with a price tag that everybody says, well, maybe it's not so bad, but I know we've done pretty much everything we can to max out that balance. To do what we can with what we're, within the budget, because when we take over for a school district, we can't go over the budgeted contract. So, and if we're asked to, we can either lose money, which as an agency, we do on food service all the time. We do about 7 districts and, I have to explain to my board all the time, well, food service is one of those departments that constantly runs in the red. And that's usually my answer. It's just because in smaller districts, without a large influx of free and reduced lunch money, you just can't make food service work financially.
I'll disagree with you,
Well,
just because I run a restaurant. So there's a way to do it, but we'll talk about.
yeah. I mean, again, you have to realize you can do it if you are willing to give up the state and federal funding piece to it. Which during the pandemic was paying for
Sure.
basically every lunch and breakfast we pumped out.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Excellent. Have a few extras. in this, right? Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Emily?
Sure. So a couple of updates within economic development. This morning we had, I guess what I'll call a micro meeting of the Economic Development Commission. It was the first time we had pulled tried to pull the full group back together for quite a few months. The executive committee had met a little bit more regularly. But what we are doing is kicking off, we've reported that we've gotten our next round, 3-year round of funding from the EDA to do our economic development work. And we are now really trying to kick off the update of the comprehensive economic development strategy. So it's the document that will guide us for a 5-year period on what we're going to be doing in terms of economic development in the region. So we tried to partner this morning with the Northwest Hills Chamber of Commerce. They had an economic forecast event at the Torrington Country Club, which was going to be in conflict with our EDC meeting. So we tried to partner up. It resulted in a little bit of a hasty EDC meeting. So we have another full EDC meeting scheduled for January 25th. And that event, we're really hoping to have a more in-depth, longer meeting where we can start to really brainstorm and strategize around this updated SEDS document. And what I said there at the EDC this morning is that it really is the region's vision for economic development. So, as much as our communities can play a part in having input in that, as much as all of our partners in collaboration can have a part in that, the better it will be. We have a really good base to work from. But, there are a lot of updates that need to be made, and the previous SEDS was done pre-COVID. So there's probably a lot of, different challenges in the way the workforce is, and some of these interesting presentations we've had, things have changed. So we're going to have to really look at it. One thing that I just want to note out to everybody here on that point is that it was brought up this morning that we possibly do a survey of the different municipal economic development commissions to kind of get a sense of what some of the issues are in your different communities that we can work with, and possibly even present the results of that survey at our January 25th EDC meeting. So I may be working that up, and hopefully we can send it through you all, and all of your planning staff or economic development staff, anybody who might interface with the EDC in your town. So just to get input. That's where we are with that. For broadband, our small team that has been working on coordinating with the different towns in the region on developing a coalition for broadband, for a strong unified front for this region when it comes to providing more broadband service. They've had a substantial success in getting communities together in the region on the same page, I think, about broadband. We're continuing to monitor what's going on with the private companies that are coming into the communities to perhaps provide service. So we'll see how that goes. And just as we monitor these things, we'll keep an eye on the federal and state funding that is available and how that's going to be dispersed throughout the state to help communities with that effort. I didn't know if Don or Henry, you had anything to say on that?
The only thing I would add to that is I think that the activities we've engaged in for the last 6 months, year or two, has put pressure on the private companies to do something before we do it without them. And so we're hopeful that, the Optimums and Frontiers and Comcast will step up to the plate. The only one that doesn't seem to care is Charter, for whatever reason. But we think the pressure we've been putting on has been helpful. So hopefully we'll see some progress in the next few months.
Okay. I just noted, and I sent to you both actually specifically with the, I guess the FCC is going to be coming out on November 18th with broadband mapping for cross country. So that'll be interesting to take a look at and see what they're.
What's interesting, just to the sideline, then I'll turn it back over to Emily, is Sharon Connect is their broadband group. And they sent out an email this week. They've been working with Comcast to get their unserved houses wired up. And I think Comcast was saying that it would cost the town $1.6 million. So just at the 11th hour when they were ready to vote, which is today, Frontier came in with a proposal, an informal proposal to do the same thing for the entire town now, not just the unserved houses, for $3 million. So if I were a Sharon resident, I was trying to vote today and either spending 1.6 or waiting to look at Comcast versus Frontier, it would be a challenge. But so I think the pressure that's being put on these companies may bear fruit.
Yeah, so we'll continue to monitor all that and help out in any way we can. And then finally, I just wanted to state that we connected with an old colleague at CROG. She let me know that I know that a couple of regions in the state, CROG and NHCOG, have revolving loan funds for brownfields redevelopment. The CROG revolving loan fund has just expanded its reach, and all of the towns in this region, not just the more urban communities, are now eligible to access that revolving loan fund for brownfields redevelopment. So it's actually a pretty significant thing. And I guess they expanded to a lot of the regions, but that's kind of a nice opportunity for our community. So if you want any more information on that, I can definitely send along the information of the person there that heads that up. And I think the only other thing I'll say is that since the last meeting, there's only one outstanding community in our region that has not yet adopted an affordable housing plan. So we have almost, I know we've been talking a lot about housing, and the plan's there, and it's still going to be a big challenge, it sounds like, but that's really exciting that every town has adopted it, and the final one is currently working on it. So that's all for me.
Casey?
First of all, I want to say thank you. I know I've been sending extensive correspondence on the TRIPS program, but for the sake of transparency, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of the new criteria as it's being developed. And again, having that Q&A being distributed as well. So the fact is as far as the takeaways, now local roads are eligible, and the fact that they did give us another month to be able to put the applications together. So if anybody had any questions, I'd be more than happy to meet on one-on-one. I know we've been trying to connect with regard to formalizing the application. Again, it seems as if there's a lot of case-by-case questions that we need to do as far as reaching out to the department, giving feedback. But we are here to assist. And again, as I said in the email, what we said in the email, the fact is that what we're looking to do is have the applications be submitted into us, probably by April 3rd, so that we can actually present it back to the board as far as the proposed listing of projects, and then submit it to the department to make the deadline at the end of April. So.
But the main good news takeaway is that local roads
Yes.
are now eligible,
Which makes sense.
which is a big deal.
Which means there'll be a lot more applications. for help.
Yeah, my gut, and I'm just speaking speculatively, my gut was that they just weren't gonna see it as many applications as I thought
Right.
in the rural regions.
It's very limiting.
Mhm. And I don't know if we should.
You'll see on the agenda, there's STIP amendments. We basically think that it needs to actually list it on the agenda, so we'll just put it on for December. No big deal.
Unless there's any questions.
Good. The next one is establish legislative committee.
Well, actually, we're still up at, the John Field Demis update, but John Field's not here. He did provide I think you all have a copy of it, a quick written report of his, before he just couldn't make it even remotely today. So, if you have any questions, I can obviously communicate them to him directly if you want to send it to me, but I don't know if you want to do municipal forum and then just take the administrative first.
Let's take the administrative items and get those done.
Okay, so the very first item under administrative legislative committee formation, I met with Mike Chris this past week, and we talked about some of that work and legislative breakfast that we didn't hold last year as a short session. We were short staffed. We'd like to bring that back again, but I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to talk about formulating a committee or at least getting people to think about it ahead of time. We want to jump on this and be ready to go as soon as February comes around.
Yeah, we usually like to try to put together a committee, 6, 7 of us to get together, to put together a draft legislative agenda to present to the general membership, probably next month. We should be on it already. But we're gonna try to put that together, and I'm just looking for you know, people that might be interested, you can either email me directly or let me know after the meeting today that you're interested. Put a few people together. It'd be a good mix to have, you know, either Winston or Torrington are both involved as well. And then have a few more small towns. I will tell you, I would love to see the membership get more involved in testifying. It's gotta be more than me and Dan and Don going down there to testify on, you know, 50 different bills during the legislative cycle, but it's good if we can put together a formulated plan, testify together, multiple communities on different things that affect the entire northwest corner. Just puts a stronger front, you know, we've done it with CCM and cost and stuff where a bunch of us have gotten together and testified all at the same time, split up the time between all of us to testify, and it makes a much stronger case. I've got my binders all set and ready to go. And we're ready to roll, so.
And Mike, one of the things I'm hearing is they're not gonna do in-person testimony this year,
Correct, they're gonna do remote testifying again this
which
year.
makes it
Oh,
easier,
that's easier.
because you don't have to drive to Hartford and sit in the room for 3 hours. waiting.
You wait for your number.
Right, and a lot of it will be watching, so if you sign up, you know, and it's something for the COG, we'll be watching this year. We're gonna try to keep an eye on when you're gonna be called next so that you know when you have to log on. So that you don't have to be there all day, you know, CCM does that, COST does it as well. But we'll know where you are on the list, and we'll be able to let you know around what time you want to log into the hearing. Unless you want to listen to the whole hearing for the 12 or 14 hours, if it's that interesting to you, but be good to put, you know, do that as well, and have that remote makes it a lot easier to drive. You know, I think a couple of the committees are gonna opt for in-person, but they haven't set that yet. You know, some of the things that we hear about, we see already, we talk with local legislators. A lot of stuff that's gonna come back is the planning and zoning, you know, regular stuff and affordable housing stuff, obviously, it's not going away. Those kind of things, and they're anticipating at least 100 to 116 proposed new taxes. So that'll be interesting to see where that shakes out, but.
And that affordable housing issue, if I remember correctly, even though it was online testimony, it still went almost 24 hours, right?
Easily. It was actually, by the time they were done receiving all testimonies, it was 28.5 hours.
Wow.
So,
I don't know if anyone would be, and I'll talk with you too, Mike, but in my previous job, I produced a legislative report for all of the local elected officials. So it's basically any bills that you'd like to track, we can produce a weekly report on what's happened with them. So that, I mean, if that's helpful.
yeah, I think anything that we put on, I mean, we did some of it last year, and CCM helped us a lot with that.
Okay,
But it was good that if we have it in-house, because they do their own, you know, and a lot of their bills might not pertain to us as much, you know,
Yeah.
so if we are putting together our own legislative agenda and there's bills that we want to watch,
Mhm.
then we make sure we add them to the list so that we can continue to watch the status of those bills.
Yeah, we can try to get that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we can look at that. So just give me an email, shoot me an email, or talk to me after the meeting and get your name down, we'll get you on the committee, and we'll set up a time. Rob and I will come up with a time and date.
Yeah, because I think the next meeting is December 10th.
Yeah,
It would be good to have that.
we have to have that done
Right,
before
yeah.
December 10th. Yeah. We should at least have a draft ready for some.
Mhm.
CCM finished their legislative priorities at the convention, and the only one that really saw any sparks fly was, again, the second follow-up of the ADU
Mhm.
conversation was now the TOD and the what are they called, transit hubs or whatever. Again, it's probably not a factor for anybody in this room, but it is them trying to do the end around on an intrusion into taking over some facet of local zoning. And so the fight was all about whether or not to keep the opt-out provision in or not.
I was in that committee
So-
meeting and it was miserable.
So,
It was a real fight.
you know, interestingly, what I would like to request is, you know, they did that ADU.
Mhm.
How many communities in the state opted out?
We can get that information.
Yeah, I think you had asked that question before, right?
Because
Yeah,
this whole dog and pony show, you know, of passing this legislation and trying to do the end around on zoning, when anybody in the room could have had ADUs if they wanted, all they gotta do is go to their zoning board. And if they have the control of the commission or whatever, they can get what they want. But my sensation is that they don't have control of the board and they're trying to do an end around. similar to this whole thing with it, now the transit hub along the train stations. And what that brings with it, that their zoning boards are hesitant to implement them. So they got one of their legislators somehow going, asking for new legislation for something that they could, CCM, my input to Mike was they should be drafting draft regulations for the communities. And if they want it, they can go get it themselves. It's not gonna come to Newmark. We're not gonna get a train station or anything. And Mayor Carbone has obviously the biggest infrastructure here and might want to keep an eye on things like this, but most of the people aren't gonna have that here. But it's the continuation of the trend. Tried it with the ADUs. Now it's gonna be the transit. Where does it go next? And that's what we need to watch.
Yeah, the big push was the opt-out piece. It was big cities against small towns really in that conversation. You got a lot of the Bridgeports, New Havens, Hartford's pushing for it, and they wanted to eliminate an opt-out and said you should have to participate there.
Cost is going to have a legislative session. They just published today. I haven't even looked at it. But Betsy sent out an email with the cost legislative program. The other thing that's going to get attention besides housing is solid waste. The committee is supposed to report out at the end of January. Mirror is going to disappear one way or another, or change drastically one way or another. And what the state does to try to get back on track instead of shipping all the waste 500 miles west using diesel and high cost, et cetera, that's got to come to a head, and the committee is supposed to report out at the end of January in time for the legislative session. So there'll be more to follow on that subject too.
Well, it'd be nice to see some of our old faithfuls, prevailing wage, the newspapers and the public notices get some traction for once in our lives, just common sense stuff. And then maybe, God forbid, we get something done with these bears.
Good luck with
Right.
We've tried that for how many years?
Hey, listen.
Lifting the cap. From
Raising-
100,000, raising the cap.
Raising the
cap,
cap.
Yeah, which makes
Yeah,
sense.
with construction costs going through the roof, the caps are worthless, right?
Right, so
There's
projects not
nothing that
getting
doesn't
done, yeah.
fall into it.
Or they're
It's a
getting
joke.
done in 4 pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't no, they're on that now. There's no breaking jobs at 4 pieces anymore.
The other thing
Did I
is,
say that?
the other thing is, towns with resident trooper programs, you're gonna want to pay attention because there's been talk with some legislators that currently got reelected, that they're talking about increasing that due to the cost of burden to the state and wanting to up that percentage again and try to revisit the 100%, which would be a huge increase to all of our communities. So that's another thing we're gonna have to keep an eye out for. There's some floating legislation. The big thing is, they can float all the legislation they want, bills will pass and fail. At the end of the day, it comes down to the implementer, which is where they try to squeak it in. You got a solid waste bill in there, and next thing at the bottom, it's got something about state troopers.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with.
At 11:55 at night.
Yeah, exactly. And they send you the 400-page document to try to read it all in one couple hours before they reconvene the next morning to vote on it, so we saw that happen year after year after year, so.
Can we move on? Let's quickly just do the administrative items. Let's whip through those and then we can have some public.
Are you gonna set up a legislative breakfast this year?
Yeah, we gotta talk about it. That's the plan, yeah.
I think we should. I do that.
So you want to go through those?
Yeah, no, just the minutes, obviously, if anybody has any.
Make a
corrections.
motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Financial statements for July, August, September, we were able to catch up now that fiscal year ended and the audit was completed. We're in a good position as far as the operating account balance. And we just received word during this meeting that we got the RSG grant. The way they're doing it this year is instead of a couple of payments, they're gonna do one lump sum. And we just received it.
162,000.
Yeah, $262,000 just came to us for our regional service grant from OPM, so that's going to help. So.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And the meeting schedule.
Yeah, again, it's, you meet on the second Thursday of each month, with the exception of August. for obvious reasons, but the only wrinkle in that is the April meeting is the first Thursday, and the reason why I propose that is because the second week of April is school vacation, and I'm constantly being brought to exotic locales, and I just think it would be easier. I don't know if anybody else had that problem with vacations. Costa Rica this year.
No, I'm not even getting to go past.
What's that? So I don't know if anybody has any issues with that, changing that one.
No vote necessary on that. So we're gonna go around, if anybody has something that they would like to say about what's going on in their town that might be applicable to others, feel free. Why don't we go around the table? I have nothing to say, other than the fact that Comcast, or not Comcast, Frontier is putting a lot of pressure on our town now to, they sent a postcard out to our residents saying that by 2028, they would do something, and then that recent meeting with us that has been pushed up to the second quarter of 2023. I think it has something to do with the coalition that we're forming up here, which they see as a big threat. So hopefully we can push them on. And I think both Don and I will have more to report on that at the next meeting.
Just a quick thing on the schedule, sorry to jump in, but on the schedule, you may want to just keep in mind November 9th is 2 days after municipal elections.
Yeah, you
So
know,
that could, yeah.
I don't think you had a November meeting those years. So should we strike
Just
it?
keep that in mind.
I would strike it because normally you don't. I know that I won't be attending that meeting.
I'll make that adjustment.
CCM also has it right around that. time, I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
I'll strike November meeting.
Yeah.
I have a meeting with Frontier next week. You know, Henry and a couple others of them had their meetings, so yeah, there will be more to report going forward. The only other thing I'll say, subject of a prevailing wage came up, so our steep grant is to bring the water lines from Winston to Buckinghamstead. No lines exist today beyond the town line. Department of Labor decided that was a prevailing wage project because it was not new construction, even though nothing existed, because we weren't building a water plant. So at $100,000 threshold, we're well over the. And you can appeal that, I suppose, but then you gotta get attorneys involved and it's more trouble than it's worth. But I couldn't believe they decided this was, rehab or reconstruction, not new construction.
That's a joke, right? I mean, let's call it what it is.
Mm.
That's somebody in Hartford just making an
Oh, I know exactly what
interpretation.
it is.
Total complete.
And besides that, the grant is being administered by Department of Public Health, who has a lot of red tape associated with their management of the grant, so sometimes you wonder about whether it's worth having grants or not. And I know you're recording this, so you could strike that comment around.
Morris, we do have 2 job openings, the assistant town clerk and the transfer station foreman. We just filled the public works maintainer job, and normally we get 50 to 60 applicants, and we had 3. So kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about a lot of jobs and no people. I do have a picture of the school lunch here at Region 6, and tater tots, a sugar cookie.
I was there that day, actually. Same exact moment. That's most fun,
There's
yeah.
a hot dog with a hamburger or sandwich bun. A pile of ketchup packets.
Yeah,
and
ketchup packets.
hopefully that's applesauce there.
Yeah, in a container, they just throw it
So
out.
it's a hot dog and a hamburger bun.
Yeah, more. Of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought tater tots are healthy, you're just telling me now? I love tater tots. Everybody loves tater tots.
The monster.
Yeah, exactly, the monster.
I just gotta say, 3 daughters going through Region 6 schools, we've always provided home lunches for them, because the school lunches are just disgusting.
I'll piggyback on that, because as soon as I left that lunch food audit, I called my daughter and said, never let my grandson eat a school lunch. That's exactly, because it really was that bad. It was really
Well,
disgusting.
and it's sad that this is the only meal that some children are getting.
Right, and if you didn't have all that food waste, it cost you less money, and you gave them stuff they would actually eat, they could always come back for more.
My kids have always hated Farmington hot lunch too.
Yeah, the motto growing up is take as much as you want, but eat all that you take. Oh, obviously, I take maybe too much, but, are you all set?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm done.
I have the same problem as Tom. We have, I'm looking at 6 openings in our town for jobs, and during COVID, when we were putting out the job postings, we'd get 20 to 25 applications. Now I get like 3 or 5. Sometimes I have to repost because even those 3 or 5 are not remotely qualified, so that's a concern, obviously.
What are the jobs, Denise?
I have a park and rec coordinator and her assistant, unfortunately, and assistant plant operator at the WPCA. I have a custodian, I have a recycling center helper, I have a land use administrator, and I have an assessor still.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have some temporary, I have an assessor right now that we borrowed from Middlebury, who's working 1 day a week, who does a great job, and we pay him much more than, well, less than a full-time assessor, but more than we would normally pay somebody. So he gets the job done with an assistant, but it's not ideal. And then as far as broadband, we are fortunate that Optimum is rolling out in, the 7 towns in by Litchfield. And our town said no to cannabis dispensaries. That was probably not surprising. I thought that would probably go that way. And just lastly, I'm just surprised at how much money is received from nipper bills. I mean, it's like 50 or 60,000 nippers just in Litchfield in 6 months. It's amazing. I just never knew that was such a market. So, yeah, so we got about almost $3,000.
Gotta go on the little side of the streets.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So that's.
Okay. Okay, no comment on the different, but all good in our little town. The only thought I had was, as we're getting to bad weather, and I know some people couldn't make it today, could we have a remote option for our meetings, at least during the winter time, for people that are a ways away? Or whatever, just thought.
I will do as you direct me. So whatever the board wants to do.
Wouldn't we like seeing you here though?
I know, I like to be here. I'm not speaking just for myself.
But if it's like bad weather,
I can
you
understand
still
it's
have
bad
to-
weather, we've got to make an hour trip. Whatever, it seems like it might enable people to get into the.
Yeah, I mean, I had a Zoom going for purposes
Yeah.
of recording. I've been putting these up on our YouTube channel, and people have appreciated them. So as
Yeah.
far as, they can't make the meeting, they can watch it later.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's here, but I didn't advertise it as a hybrid, so I can't give out the link because I'm violating. So, it just, whatever it is, I'll take the direction, like we can do anything, so. I know some meetings are great when you have huge regions, Zoom works great. Sometimes meetings in person are very valuable too, so I get it. I just, we'll do whatever we're requested to do, so.
Some of the regions are going to like a, once every quarter, they have an in-person meeting, so it's kind of a compromise, I guess. Just what I've heard, but
I heard you mention Microsoft meetings. If you want to vote on that,
Teams.
Microsoft meetings is awful.
the teams is hard.
It's awful as a user. I don't know about hours to set up the meeting, but every time I've been on meetings, I find it very awkward to be a participant.
I'm used to Zoom for the last 3 years,
Yes,
so I
I think most of us are.
It's too easy not to use. And I agree with Gordon that there should be a hybrid option through the winter, but people need to let the team know what's going on if people are coming.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that and come to a decision for the December meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll take it from there. Is that fair?
Yeah.
As an easy option so that you all can so that we all can let you know, rather than doing it through email, can we go with creating a calendar invite? And so all I have to do is,
decline or
yes.
accept,
and then all the
I was-
attachments will be part of that.
Yeah, I was getting to that point at one point, having everything in one email. I know it's, you get a lot of emails. I get a ton too. I can't stand my email inbox usually. But we moved over from Google Workspace to Outlook, and so now we have an issue of populating group emails and stuff like that. We're still working through that. But yes, I'd like to get to that point. And as an aside, the REPT steering committee, or which one it was. I didn't do an invite because we had an issue, like I could not get it out and I couldn't do the Outlook invite and we had a whole bunch of them not show up. So it's like, that's obviously people are relying on that, so we want to get back to that, yes.
Patrick.
All
right, everything, well, as the guy who drives the farthest, I do appreciate it. I just hate the fact that I can't get any work done in Washington and Morris because there's no signal. But everything's going great in Roxbury. There's, I have no positions to hire. Sorry about that. We just bought 2 acres across the street from the town hall last night at a town meeting. I was pretty excited about that. Everything else is going great.
How's the dog?
Dog's wonderful.
Yeah.
Dog's at work right now.
What are you doing with the 2 acres?
Nothing, actually. We didn't use land acquisition fund because I didn't want to be limited to its use. So it just happened to be up. It was a guy that had been in the town his whole life. He passed away. And it was his siblings that wanted to see the town get it. I had an appraisal done at 250, we bought it for 150.
So it's just a wait and see.
Level
Future
2
use.
acre lot. I'm actually going through, and I don't know if you guys have had to deal with this. I'm kind of mimicking new towns, but a special event permitting. That was never really allowed in the town, so we can start holding events. We have another 7 acres also across the street. It's not contiguous with the other one, but where we can kind of start holding events and have a policy for it. So I kicked that to zoning, so we're working on that this month so that we can have car shows and camper shows and some of the things that people have been asking about that we just haven't really addressed up till now. So that's another avenue that we're kind of going. And then I'm also getting into the policies and procedures and job descriptions. I figure those are all good winter projects to work on for the town anyway. That's all I have.
Other than the recent events, things are going pretty well.
My turn, ready? That was. I just wanted to touch base on the emails. I did appreciate that. Not everyone responded all. We're learning. Only four people I know what they're having for lunch today. And I appreciate it. And I suppose it's information I need to know, but some of you may or may not know, I was recently elected as Northwest Transit District Chairman. So I'll be meeting with some of your towns one-on-one to go over the services that the transit district provides to your community or can provide to your community. And then some of you will be talking about paying your bills and what's been budgeted and what we haven't received this year. Because we need that as our municipal grant match from the state of Connecticut. So we'll be talking about that. But I know one of the big things, and Eleanor and Chris and I are on a committee together, and one of the big things that's come from all of us over the years with the transit district is not getting data of what's provided to our community. And that's important for us to make financial decisions, for our Board of Finance to make decisions if they even want to fund it. So we're going to put an entire packet together for you to talk to you about that. Tell you what you budgeted. We did find that, and I don't want anyone to get sticker shocks. I want to touch base on it now, is that that the 18% has been miscalculated for quite some time. So 18% of the cost of running the transit district is supposed to come from the participating towns that participate in the district. And working with DOT, we've uncovered that it was pretty much it was not calculated properly over the years. So it's important to know you're going to know your trips, you're going to know what we're doing for your community, you're going to know how much it costs for us to operate those trips for your communities. And then you'll know what your cost is going into next year. We're hoping to do all that well before January so that you guys can have it for your budget seasons, but working on that. As far as Harwich goes, we have our hometown holiday event coming up December 3rd. You're all welcome. We usually see anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people there. We'll be doing that this year. We are planning to apply for trips and lots of money. We have contracted with Cardinal to start doing some of the pre-engineering stuff that's required. Our GIS is up and running right now. The town did receive a $2,500 grant from KERMA because we received the excellence in risk management. That will go into a training account for our employees to take advantage of to continue in risk management as we go forward. And outside of that, everything's status quo. Your turn, buddy.
I didn't pay the bill because they didn't give me the data. So if you want the money, you're gonna bring the data.
I'm bringing the data.
Wasn't me, my selectman said, hey, what are we doing? Where's this van going? Anyway, so New Hartford's got a lot of things cooking. We did send some zoning regs to the COG for review last night. We had a great meeting. And of course, we had that fire a year ago, August. And last night, the zoning board changed the zoning regs to allow the green light for the building to come in next month and be considered. So the owner who bought it a month before the fire is going through with this massive proposal to rebuild the new Hartford House. And, you know, interestingly, when you have these old buildings, which many of us do, they predate zoning and then they've been modified through the years, and there is no site coverage ratio or parking back in those days. And these buildings are approved because the town said they could be approved. You know, in a qualitative sense, not in a quantitative sense, and you're getting down into, you know, roof heights and you know, the big thing, of course, in village centers is parking, which was the hiccup that almost derailed it last night. But after I tweaked them a little bit, and a couple of our commissioners, you know, thought about it, they did approve it. So we're really, really looking forward to that, and that'll be a big economic development boost. The building will look very much like the old building, but it will have a fourth floor, in part to respond to the economics of building, because the cost, what was a $950,000 building a year and a half ago, will probably cost $3 to $4, perhaps $5 million to recreate with another code. So also expected in December or January is the largest development to hit New Hartford in its history, which will be a 220 plus unit senior housing complex with a micro hotel, a drive-through restaurant, a car wash, and it will all cycle out right by our grocery store. And it's the one thing that most businesses want: more units and more credit cards. So that will be something we already did the zoning for. We have this new design development district, which the main criteria is that you have to hook to the water and the sewer system in that area of town, but it could literally change the landscape of the Route 44 corridor in that area.
And by Waring?
Hmm?
By Waring?
Actually, a little bit further east, on land that's owned by Henry Bear Camp Village Construction, that is now under contract to Tim Bobrovsky from Harwinton, who runs Canterbury Village Senior Housing Complex, already a separate complex in Hartford. So we're excited to have those two things going forward, and really could be exciting stuff. So,
Is it all market rate, or is there a portion of subsidized?
that has not been vetted yet. Right now, he has, I think Tim has 4 or 5 different complexes in different communities, and he has 24 units already in New Hartford that I think were originally approved with some restricted units. And I think you're going back 25 years ago. But originally, it was supposed to be age not restricted, but age targeted for seniors. So, but he has started to throw out, because the numbers are just getting crazy. And it is really starting to make the town think about how we deal with developers of this scale, because we've never given a tax abatement in our lives. And for the first time in November, we will go to set the wheels in motion to create legislation locally that will allow the selectmen to negotiate these. Because if this goes as planned, he could be our second or third highest taxpayer within 8 to 10 years. You know, you're talking about competing with the Eversources and MDC, and what could be massive taxation with little to no cost to the town. In a private development, we wouldn't even have to plow the roads. So, you know, no, theoretically, no children in the schools, but just giving people that opportunity, which is sorely needed in Hartford, to be able to downsize into something that's managed from the outside, where they don't have to do the main, the stuff we were talking with CHFA. You don't have to paint it, you don't have to mow the lawn, you don't have to plow. So, but you know, big.
Status quo in Warren, really, moving forward with a project to build a road and a new bridge to our town hall. Which will be welcomed and desperately needed, and it'll also serve to serve our affordable housing when we get there, which we're moving forward with. Building back there in town land, and other than that, really status quo.
So in the city of Torrington, the good news is Prospect Street reconstruction is complete. So if any of you have been avoiding Prospect Street as a collector road to the center of Torrington, I'll get through there. It's great. It's got a bike lane, new sidewalks, a really good project. CIF 2030 grant round was just recently opened. The city of Torrington will be submitting a few applications, one of which is really a partnership with Arlington and creating a upcycling facility over by our WPC, our water treatment facility, and our facility. I appreciate the outreach on the opioid settlement funds. Although when I ran my finger down the list of how much the small towns were getting, it really doesn't, it's not going to make a big difference for any of you. But the city of Torrington is receiving some good funding from this. I have spent the last 3 nights trying to read through the 600-page settlement agreement and then the 300-page distribution agreement, on this. These payments are going to be coming to us over the next, I'm reading it's 18 years in one agreement and it's 9 years in one of the other agreements. So over the next 9 years. So developing a, planful spending plan for these that remediates the opioid crisis is top on my list of priorities. I think the first 2 payments we received totaled $40,000. And then we'll be looking at those annual payments, base payments plus incentives. It's painful. I worked in the legal community for 35 years. This is the most painful agreement I've ever read for things.
I gotta figure out what to do with my 169.
I know.
What's going on?
So it's all relative though. I mean, we did receive a bar grant. I may have already reported that out once before. We're doing a study on the brownfield areas on the Route 4 corridor or Midgeon Avenue. So that's between Riverside Avenue, the 4 corners of Riverside Avenue, and around the corner on Midgeon Avenue where Forbes School is. And just a quick update on our ARPA funding, our ARPA grants. The city of Torrington did receive just a smidge over $10 million. We claimed what we could up to $10 million as lost revenue. We recently pushed out $1.8 million to businesses and not-for-profits that were negatively impacted by the pandemic. We're going to be opening another round of grant funds, another $875,000, again, to businesses. And these grants were a combination of facade improvement grants and business incentive grants. It's been a real positive use of these funds, and we're really quite proud of our process and our ability to support those businesses.
And hi, everybody. So in Winchester, we have a whole bunch of things going on. First, the Sue Grossman Greenway expansion now runs, it's complete. It's now runs from the Torrington City line up through the DMV over on Raleigh Street. We have 2 major former mill buildings along Route 44 that are in some phase of development with a new purchaser coming in for 10 Bridge Street, for those of you who might be familiar. With jobs, we're having a hard time filling public works positions. We have 2 police officer vacancies and haven't been able to find really skilled, qualified candidates. And where we are finding candidates, I'm finding that they're this close to being exactly what we need, but we have a perfect assistant building official, but we really need a full building official. We have someone who has 30 years of experience as an appraiser, but no experience in a municipal assessor's office. So there are a lot of challenges there. We just had online permitting go live through OpenGov. I know that a lot of you use that or are considering using that. We have a new website through Civic Lift that's launching this coming Monday. For those of you who are already on that platform, we'll be joining you. We had a wonderful tabletop exercise run by John Fields earlier this week that really focused on training and preparing for school shooting of some kind. I really recommend reaching out to John if you haven't had an exercise like that in your regional school district or in your town or city. It was eye-opening for me, and it was really the conversation revolved around schools, but turning that on its head and thinking about our public facilities. We actually had not that long ago an incident, and I won't get into details, but an incident where a member of our staff was targeted by a member of the public. And this gave me a lot of good thoughts about how we can try and address that and increase safety in the future. Generally, we're overwhelmed by grant applications and capital improvements, but that's not really new. The one other thing I'll share with all of you is that the regional cold weather shelter has traditionally been in Torrington. We are currently in the process of trying to have that open up this year in Winstead. There were a few sites that were considered in Winstead. Ultimately, we're trying to move forward with the former Winstead Health Center up on Spencer Street. I was on the phone actually just yesterday with Brian Mattiello and Rob right here and our new town planner. And the issue that we're seeing is the town never approved any kind of zoning use that allows for a charitable boarding house. So that is coming before the COG if it hasn't already been sent for a review of a change to a zone that abuts neighboring properties. That's our town center zone, I believe, or our town gateway zone, forgive me. And we're trying to get this to move through as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to share that with everybody since the zone does abut some of our neighboring properties, and special thanks to the staff for looking into that quickly. That's all I've got.
Our sidewalks are done.
Yeah.
Finally. Only 14 years. They actually started demoing on August 1st, and this week they're doing the final salt protection, and there's a couple of repair areas that they have to do, and they're going to be 99.9% done, which is great. Mather was great to work with despite a lot of craziness on social media as usual. They really did a fantastic job. We have 2 referendum questions that are going to be coming up in December. One is to appropriate up to basically $200,000 for a second resident state trooper that will serve as a school resource officer during the school year, and then out into a second resident state trooper when school is not in session. There's been a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion. So that's going to be a referendum question. And the town reimburses the fire department for the paid EMS staffing. We use ERM right now. And that number is going to easily exceed the budget. So we're going to have to ask the taxpayers to allocate another $100,000 to get us through to the end of the fiscal year. So, and we just learned that the second substance use disorder facility is back in motion and applying for permits with the town. So that's going to be moving forward, which is going to put more stress on the EMS system. So that's for anybody who isn't worried about that, start worrying about that. I would start worrying about that definitely for your 8 to however long it's going to take for that facility to come into town, because it's going to affect your EMS, and you guys have pretty good EMS up in that neck of the woods. I had a question from a town outside of the COG just Monday, asking about cannabis use in public parks. And I said that I would ask the question out to the COG, and was just sort of looking to see if anybody is going to be updating ordinances, not allowing it, allowing it, and outside parks.
Yeah, we prohibited
Yeah,
the use of cannabis in municipally owned property.
it came up with a dispensary and
You allowed?
growing facilities and
prohibited.
use on town property was part of it. I know some other towns are looking at it, read it in the papers around. But yeah, passed right through
Ours will be
last year.
at the December meeting or December town meeting.
put an ordinance together, being in town properties, similar to the smoking ban.
I was gonna say, yeah. this issue with
Right, yeah,
tobacco.
sort of,
Yeah, we just piggybacked on that.
and so for outside as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in Torrington, we included public sidewalks. So it's not just the parks, we included sidewalks because we have quite a few restaurants that do outdoor dining, and we wanted to make sure that they covered that.
Winchester actually replicated your ordinance, yes. So we also have a prohibition on public sidewalks.
Could you send me your ordinance? That would be great. And then tonight, I think it planning and zoning, hopefully we'll be wrapping up the P O C D update, and we're working on, we have an EV charger that's ancient at town hall, and it's one of the chargers doesn't work and hasn't worked in 5 years, and the other one is sort of limping along, so we're looking to replace that one and add one next to our welcome center, which is really close to Route 7, and then waiting for that federal highway money to come through, because we, as any other town on Route 7 from the Milford North, have all been designated on that alternative fuels charging designation through the feds, and there should be some money coming down from that. And ditto to everybody else with trips and capital.
Good. Well, let's see here, we were in contract with Fire Mag to get a new fire truck built. Can't believe a new fire truck's gonna be $947,000. It's gonna take 2 years to get. Our new 6-wheel drive public works truck came in. And now we're waiting for the new hard body to be built. But that'll be coming out of next fiscal year's budget, that new body, because of the length of the truck and the cost. At a selectmen's meeting last week, the week before, I should say, because of the election week this week. We had DOT come in and speak to us, present their new rotary to the public. There was no vote or anything, they were just looking for public support. So everything looks good. It's gonna funnel the traffic in the center of town to slow everybody down. And they're gonna cut the ridge out of the center of the road, so hopefully going east and west with the sun and the winter ice and snowstorms, that it'll be safer. So that's we more or less, they're gonna come back, but more or less gave them the approval that we all were satisfied with the plan. That's like another 4 to 5 years of getting this project done. So who knows when it's gonna start and when they're gonna come back and let us know they're gonna start. So waiting for a grant, for a pass-through grant from small cities for the Goshen Housing Trust here for paving of the parking lot and fixing of the facades here. I contacted small cities people, and they said that I just hold it up the grants. So that was one of the answers. I'm working on the grant for the Goshen Cornwall bus. Gordon, the accountant, will be sending you over a bill. So taking care of that now. What else? Well, the EV charger is out. Final price of the EV charger was $178,000. So that is out. We're not putting one in the town of Goshen, not on town property. Imagine that, 178,000, and a digital sign.
VW settlement money. The VW settlement money.
Yeah, well, you gotta be within 5 miles of Route 8. So we're not within 5 miles of Route 8. And then the digital sign that everybody wanted in town to let everybody know when they have to vote, when there's a meeting, is $130,000. I didn't even have to ask the Board of Finance. They shut it down before I even asked. $130,000 for a digital sign. It was crazy. And I got the approvals from DOT, Department of Transportation, for discontinue in the passing lane where that young Torrington kid got killed here on Route 8. So there's not gonna be a passing lane on Route 8 between Ivy Mountain and West Side Road. So,
63.
yeah, so, it was a short passing lane and apparently he must have been going pretty fast on his bike. He passed 2 cars. And the lady that was putting her driveway, he probably didn't see, whacked her, got killed. And so we discontinued it, so. No more passing on 63 at the center of town here.
It's good.
Good. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Don't forget there's lunch in the hallway.
That's why Henry's.
I'm not using taxes, this is worth it.
Tom said he, $25,000. Lorentano signed. I got him. I got him.